December 16, 1944. If General George S. Patton had not made one phone call, if he had not spoken 4 impossible words, the United States would have lost its largest battle in Western Europe. Not just lost. 20,000 American soldiers would have been destroyed, surrounded, freezing, dying in the snow. Ammunition was running out. Every military expert said rescue was impossible. Every general believed there would be no breakthrough, except one. They called him old, too harsh, too reckless. George Patton. And within days, one phone call changed everything. On December 16, 1944, Germany launched a massive offensive in the Ardennes forest. Over 250,000 soldiers, nearly 600 tanks, thousands of artillery guns. The goal was clear: break through the Allied lines and capture the port of Antwerp. 3 days later, on December 19th, the U.S. 101st Airborne Division, together with elements of the 10th Armored Division, became completely surrounded in the town of Bastogne. Temperature, -15 degrees Celsius. Snow, fog, frozen roads. Air support could not fly because of heavy cloud cover. Ammunition was running low. Fuel was running out. German forces of the 5th Panzer Army under General von Manteuffel were tightening the ring around the town. Bastogne was isolated. The situation was critical. Verdun, Allied headquarters. General Dwight Eisenhower gathered his commanders. The question was simple: how long would it take to launch a counterattack? Patton's Third Army was nearly 150 kilometers to the south. It was advancing in a completely different direction. To relieve Bastogne, he would have to stop the current offensive, pivot the entire army 90 degrees, reorganize supply lines, move multiple divisions across frozen roads. Most commanders expected the same answer. At least a week, maybe more. Patton looked at Eisenhower and said, 48 hours. The room went silent. Some officers thought it was impossible. Others thought it was madness. But Patton had already been planning the turn, and that changed everything. That night, Patton did not sleep. Maps were spread across tables, routes were recalculated, fuel lines were redirected, entire divisions began turning north. Before the official order was even signed, then came the call. Patton picked up the phone and contacted General Eisenhower. His voice was calm, no hesitation. "I can attack now." 4 words. Simple, direct. But behind them stood tens of thousands of men, hundreds of tanks, and a gamble that could end his career. According to officers in the room, Eisenhower paused. He understood the risk. If Patton failed, the Third Army could be cut off. If he succeeded, Bastogne would survive. In that moment, the fate of 20,000 soldiers rested on 4 words, and Eisenhower approved the attack. Within hours, the movement began. The 4th Armored Division, under General Hugh Gaffey, took the lead. Behind them moved the 26th Infantry Division and the 81st Infantry Division. Patton's Third Army began one of the fastest operational pivots of the war. Over 100,000 men changed direction in winter conditions. Primary equipment rolled north. M4 Sherman medium tanks, M10 tank destroyers, M7 Priest self-propelled artillery, supply trucks, fuel convoys, medical units. Everything had to move. The roads were narrow, covered in ice. Many bridges were damaged or destroyed. Traffic jams stretched for miles. Yet the columns kept advancing, day and night, through snow and freezing wind. Between December 21st and December 23rd, the lead elements pushed forward nearly 150 kilometers. Then, on December 23rd, the weather cleared. For the first time in days, Allied aircraft filled the sky. Fighter bombers attacked German positions. Supply planes dropped ammunition into Bastogne. And on December 26, 1944, the 4th Armored Division broke through the German lines and reached the southern edge of Bastogne. The encirclement was broken. The ring was shattered. 20,000 soldiers were no longer alone. In the Bastogne sector operated major elements of the German 5th Panzer Army, including experienced armored divisions that had fought on the Eastern Front. Their objective was not just Bastogne, it was speed. If Bastogne had fallen, German armored units would have gained open road access toward the Meuse River. From there, the path toward Antwerp widened, and Antwerp was the key. Nearly 70% of Allied supplies in Western Europe flowed through that port. If Antwerp had been captured or even disabled, Allied supply lines would have collapsed. Fuel shortages, ammunition shortages, operational paralysis, British and American forces could have been separated, and the German High Command was counting on exactly that. A divided Allied front, political tension, delays. Even a temporary success could have prolonged the war by several months. And in December 1944, the Allies were already exhausted after months of fighting through France. Additional months of war would not have meant symbolic losses. They would have meant tens of thousands of additional casualties. This is why Bastogne mattered. And this is why Patton's decision was more than tactical. It was strategic. George Patton was not a perfect commander. He was aggressive, he was controversial, he often clashed with other generals. Some considered him reckless. Others thought he cared too much about speed. But in December 1944, speed was exactly what the Allies needed. Caution would have meant delay. Delay would have meant surrender. Patton understood something critical. In modern warfare, momentum is everything. If you hesitate, you lose initiative. If you lose initiative, you lose lives. In my view, this was not just about courage. It was about timing. Patton acted before the situation became irreversible, and that is what separated him from the others in that room. If you believe another commander could have made the same decision, write their name in the comments. I would genuinely like to know your opinion. History often remembers battles by numbers, by divisions, by tank columns, by kilometers on a map. But sometimes history turns on something much smaller, a decision, a risk, a moment when one man says, "I will move." If Bastogne had fallen, thousands of American soldiers would have marched into captivity. The German advance toward Antwerp might have regained momentum, and the war in Western Europe could have dragged on longer, costing even more lives on both sides. Instead, one army turned north in the snow. One commander chose speed over caution, and one phone call became part of history. If someone in your family lived through those years, or told you stories about that winter of 1944, share them in the comments. Because history is not only written in books, it lives in memory. Thank you for watching.
This was Mike, and this was War Working Science from my point of view.